folks, my name is Jen, and today we are going to talk about the books that I am planning on reading this spring. It is honestly very hard to believe that it's honestly kind of hard to believe that it's already like, what, the last official week of February, I think? And, yeah, I need to pick out my spring TBR. So I have I'd say fairly tentative and rather ambitious TBR for the next 3 months. We'll get into that in a sec. Firstly, and basically I have the things that I want to desperately read, which are namely keeping up with my own personal, challenges to myself, basically, which consist of trying to read a nonfiction book a month, a classic book a month, something from my nightstand of shame, at least one a month. And nightstand of shame isn't actually a nightstand of shame anymore because I've put the books where they belong on the shelves. It's basically just books that I started reading and stopped reading for whatever reason, and I need to get back to them. So that's those. And then also I have the books for the Freedom Reads Band Challenged book, year-long challenge. Basically, I have books I'm trying to read for that, and I've tried to work it out to be one a month. So yeah, we'll talk about those requirements, all of those first, and there's 3 of each because, yes, this is my spring TBR, so it's covering March, April, and May. And then there's some other books, of course, that I would really like to get to. So in my couple of stacks that I have behind me, I have the 3 books for the Freedom Reads Challenge. So firstly, it was most likely March's pick because I've already started reading it, is Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. This is for the challenge prompt of a book that has been banned internationally. Started reading this. I'm where am I? Page 81. Really interesting so far. So this is a book that is about Lady Chatterley, obviously, and she ends up taking a lover. The interesting thing is there's a lot more to the story than it seems like there is when you read the back of the book. Banned for indecency, Constance Chatterley is a young woman trapped in an unfulfilling marriage to an aristocrat whose war wounds have left him paralyzed. After her husband demands she provide him with an heir, she begins an affair with their gamekeeper, a working-class man named Oliver Malors. Okay, so that's where it is. We're not even quite there yet in that book. I've only just, I think, we've just met Oliver, I believe. But no sexy time has happened between them yet, although there has been sexy times with her and somebody else that she also had a lover for a little while, interestingly enough. And then the other part of it is, it sounds like, oh, this is so terrible, her husband's demanding an heir and she could blah, 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 blah. Her husband basically tells her, yeah, I need someone to carry on the family name. I can't provide you with a child, so you're going to have to find a guy to help you provide you with a child so they can carry on the name. So he is completely aware of this. He, in fact, even is like, yo, you need to do this. So it's like everybody out here acting like she's some kind of whore or something. You know, her and her husband are in agreement about this, which I guess would also have been incredibly scandalous for people at the time, but whatever. Also, this is a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. There has been a couple of sex scenes already in here, and I can 100% understand. Oh yeah, that might be why people were horrified at the time, even though, at the time, didn't they have, wasn't the first porn video made, around then? By acting like a prude. But, so, I don't know. Anyway, interesting book so far. I'll have lots of thoughts, I imagine, when I'm done reading this. I hope that this is going to be a really good book. I have a feeling I'm going to be very upset with this book, but I don't know. Very interesting so far. Written very easy to read. I talked too long about that. The next couple of books for April and May, I decided to just get Lolita out of the way. So it's Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and this is a book about a man named Humbert who ends up being seduced by this complicated stuff. He has the hots for his stepdaughter. It's yucky. But this is a book that has, I think, what did I have this as? Book that has been burned, literally or figuratively. That's fulfilling that prompt. So, yeah, I don't 100 know what to expect from this book. I've heard things, but then I've also heard reviews, and yeah, so I don't know. And then I also wanted to pick up The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, which is of course her diary that she had, I think, before and during the time when they were hidden away in Amsterdam, hiding from the Nazis. So this is fulfilling the banned nonfiction prompt, which is crazy to me that this is banned. But I mean, the things that happen now, it shouldn't surprise me at all, I guess. This is a 75th anniversary edition, and I didn't realize when I first picked this up that this actually says that it includes previously unpublished material, and I'd heard about that before, that some things from her original diary were held back by her dad because he was afraid of how people would perceive his daughter. That's what I heard, but this is the full, like, unabridged version, which I didn't even attempt to grab that, but I'm glad that that's the copy that I got because I would want to read her full diary as it was. So yeah, so that's fulfilling those prompts, and then the next things are classics for spring. And honestly, I have had this on my mind since I got this copy not that long ago, and I decided, you know what, spring sounds like a good time to do a reread of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. You probably know what this is about. This is about Lizzie Bennet and her 4 ridiculous sisters, her ridiculous mother, and her dad. As Lizzie has encounters with the shy and very uptight Darcy, and her encounters with him and society, and yeah, you know. This is the movie cover, which I honestly kind of love, not gonna lie. But yeah, so want to do a reread of this, and I have not read this in years. And then I also figured, hey, this is a pretty good time to read the unread Jane Austen I have on my shelves, which is Mansfield Park. Never read this before. I always forget what this is about all the time. I've read this synopsis many times and I just keep forgetting about it. Basically, this book is a study of 3 families, the Bertrams, Crawfords, and Prices, with the isolated figure of the heroine Fanny Price at its center. Fanny's quiet passivity, her steadfast loyalty and love for the son of the family, who regard her as the poor relation and who have taken her under their roof, are among the qualities whose true worth is not appreciated until they are tried against the brilliant and witty Mary and Henry Crawford, unfortunate consequences of whose influence are felt by everyone. I don't know what to expect, but interested all the same. And then, because it's a classic and also it feels like a good springtime read, I want to dive into Heidi. So this, all I know about Heidi is basically the Shirley Temple movie, right? Which I took some, which I am quite certain goes some places that the book does not. But basically this is about a girl named Heidi, who is sent to live with her gruff, grumpy, estranged grandfather in the Swiss Alps, and comes to love it there. And then I think at some point someone comes to collect her and bring her back to the city to be educated. It's a whole thing. It's basically another one of those stories of little girl goes to the country. Nature is wonderful. You get it. So I tried to read this a couple of years ago and never really got that far into it, but figure good time to give it another go because it does indeed feel very much like a spring read. Speaking of spring reads, I also have my nonfiction books. This one also feels kind of like a spring read, and it's called Anything Can Happen in Vermont, and this is by Marguerite Hurry Wolf. And this is basically a collection of humorous essays. Basically, it's a Vermonter's Vermont book. It says, Mrs. Wolf speaks for Vermont, what every Vermonter yearns to hear but is often too reticent to put into words, is a Vermonter's Vermont book because Marguerite Wolf does not consider Vermonters quaint, comic, eccentric, or anything more or less than wonderfully human. So, what this sounds like is it is basically herself and her family transplanted from mid-Manhattan to a farm in northern Vermont and learn what it's like to become a Vermonter, basically. So, it sounded like a fun read. Slight fish out of water situation, but I liked that it said it's not like, it sounds like it won't be another one of those, like, White Christmas situations where, you know, the Vermonters are just kind of, like, stupid and hokey or whatever like that. It sounds like it'll be more than that, which is nice. And then, because I am hoping to potentially get to do a reread and annotation of the Joy Luck Club this spring, I don't know if I'm going to be able to squeeze it in or not, but I'm hoping I can. If not, it will be in the summertime. But I wanted to do a reading of Amy Tan's memoir. So this is called The Opposite of Fate, Memories of a Writing Life. And yeah, it's a memoir of Amy Tan's life and her writing and her writing career. So I really love her writing. I find it to be incredibly beautiful. So excited to read some nonfiction by her. And then this one, I figured because we have our annual getaway we do with friends in March coming up at the end of the month, and I usually try to pick like very specific things to bring with me to read during this getaway, which sometimes I manage to finish a book, not always, but yeah, I like to bring a couple of options with me. And I figured, you know what, for a nerdy little weekend, this nonfiction book might be a good time. It's My Captain America, Granddaughter's Memoir of a Legendary Comic Book Artist by Megan Margulies, and this is, it's by a memoir by the granddaughter of one of the men who created Captain America, among other famous comic book characters. So I thought that was pretty sweet, and also it's not that long, so. And then, lastly, for the big time definite need to get through for the spring books, we come to my Nightstand of Shame reads, which are a little bit different than normal. Normally I try to get like 3 separate books that I would part way through. In this case, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to try to focus on finishing a trilogy. So basically, it's the Shades of Magic trilogy. I have read A Darker Shade of Magic twice now, and each time I have fucking loved it. But then I never follow through and finish the rest of the trilogy. So I really need to get on that, and I would really, really, really like to try to focus in on doing that. In fact, this might end up being one of the things that I bring with me on our getaway, because I feel like the atmosphere would be good to get through this book. But anyway, Shades of Magic, there's basically different types of London. Grey London, which is our London, basically, only this is like in the 1800s. with one mad king, George III. It's basically towards George III's end of his life. There's Red London, which is full of magic, and then there's White London, which is now kind of devoid of magic because of fucking terrible war that's basically drained it completely. Once upon a time there was Black London, but Black London, nobody talks about it. It's been destroyed, basically. But there's this man named Kel. He is a traveler. He is a magician that can use blood to travel between the existing Londons. And he also kind of smuggles on the side. That's very much on the DL. He is not supposed to be doing that. Especially since he has connections with the royal family. But on one of these occasions during his smuggling, he comes across an artifact that is from Black London, and it should not exist, and shit happens. So this is so fucking good, you guys. I'm so mad at myself that I've never been able to do the follow through, and I think that's mostly because I'm like really afraid that this series is not going to hit my expectations. I think that's my main problem, is I'm afraid that it's gonna fall very short, because I've been hyping this up in my head because of how freaking good this book is, and I really need to finish this. So yeah, I'm gonna try to focus on finishing these for my Nightstand of Shame reads. So book 1, then book 2 is Gathering of Shadows. As you can see, I have my little Nico bookmark in there that I started reading and never finished. Book 2, and then book 3 is A Conjuring of Light. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get to that. So that's the big required, really want to get to books. Then we get into basically middle grade March kind of a read, so like March specific reads that I want to get to. For March specific reads, the thing is that I am not planning on doing like a adjacent to middle grade March, but not quite with that. I have no plans to actually follow the prompts at this juncture. But I did, because I have like so many other reading plans and things I want to do. But I did want to attempt to do some rereads of middle grade books in March, just because that's fun. So I've got a few here. The first couple are both by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. One of them is One of the Third Grade Thonkers. Probably sounds very weird. It's about a boy, what is his name? Jimmy. He's part of a club called Rough and Terrible Thonkers. I don't know, it's like 12-year-old boys, and when was this written? The 80s? That sounds about right. So they're just in this little like club, basically. Being tough and terrible and all that jazz. But life changes a little bit for Jimmy when his younger cousin ends up having to come stay with them for a while because his aunt is going into the hospital for like a procedure. So they're going to have to take care of, what's his name, David, for a little bit. Which is like, David's scared of everything, so it's very annoying, but then things happen. So I remember I really liked this book when I was a kid. So yeah, don't know how it'll be now, but I was always a fan of Phyllis Reynolds Naylor growing up, so. And then the other book by her is actually a double feature. It is The Boys Start the War, The Girls Get Even, and this is about the Hatfords and the Malloys. You see what she did there. The Hatford boys live in this really nice area where it gets a little bit back from the road or something from what I remember. There's 2 houses. And their house is there, but their friend's house, the friends have moved. There's a big group of boys too, and they just moved, and they now have a new family that's moving in, and it's 3 girls. And of course, these are younger boys, and they're absolutely horrified because, you know, cooties and all that dumb shit. So yeah, they just start a series of escalating pranks on each other, and things get pretty crazy. I can't remember what I felt about this book when I was a kid, but I know I read it a couple of times. So, and then I also wanted to give a reread to Follow My Leader by James B. Garfield. This is about a boy who, I can't remember what exactly happened, but he has some kind of accident and it renders him blind. And so it's about him kind of coping with this and trying to adapt, and he's at like a school or some kind of like learning center so he can learn how to adapt to a life without his eyesight. And on the course of this, he gets a dog, which is a leader, basically. And this is about his life kind of adapting to that and his life with leader. And I remember I really loved this book when I was a kid. Could not tell you more than that because I can't quite remember how things progress or end or anything about this book, but I do remember that this made a significant impression on me as a kid. Then this one is Tomas Takes Charge. It is by Charlene Joy Talbot, and can't fully remember everything going on in this book other than it's about a boy named Tomas who he and his sister end up, I believe, hiding out in like an apartment building because I can't remember which one of their parents, but one of their parents has not come home, basically trying to keep from being put into the system. They're very afraid of being put into the system, being separated, and they're waiting for their, is it their mom? Is it their dad? I can't quite remember. But yeah, so this is about that kind of like whole experience. I remember this book also made a big impression on me when I was a kid. Can't remember a ton about it because I literally have not read this since I was a child, but yeah, wanted to give this a reread too. And this book I remember also being significant because when I was like, I don't know, how old was I? 8, maybe 9. This had the significance of being the first chapter book I ever read in an entire sitting, because I remember being incredibly proud of myself at the time. But yeah. And then this last book, I don't have any memory of this book at all. So I honestly don't know if I've ever read this, to be completely honest. It's called Chukaro, Wild Pony of the Pampa, and it's by Frances Calame. And basically, this is about 12-year-old Pedro and Chukaro, a perfect colt. It's a wild pony that he basically is trying to like train. And there's like some conflict because one of the local cowboys wants to give it to someone else, the pony. So, complications. But yeah, I have no memory of this story at all. So I don't know if I ever actually read it. But yeah, figured, hell, unread middle grade book on my shelf, let's get to it. And then these next books also might be March, perhaps, or I'm hoping maybe they'll be March reads. We'll see. March is going to be crazy month. But I am wanting to do, I think, maybe a whole reading vlog of a weekend or a couple of weekends of reading these books all at once, because I think that would just be fun. And I also just want to really plow through these books. These are the first 5 books in the Lady Hardcastle mystery series by T.E. Kinsey. You have already heard me talk about a couple of them before, but they are basically about Lady Hardcastle, who is this kind of eccentric widow in the early 1900s in England, and she comes back to England with her also kind of eccentric maid, Florence Armstrong, and they basically move back for a quiet Life in the Country, which is the first book after having a lot of adventures, and it sounds like getting up to a lot of shenanigans, including maybe some spy work and stuff like that. And unfortunately, murder is afoot. So, yeah, that's basically this. So it's A Quiet Life in the Country, In the Market for Murder, Death Around the Bend, A Picture of Murder, and The Burning Issue of the Day. So yeah, I really would like to get to these fairly early on in March, I think. I'm hoping for March, but the more I'm like thinking about all of the weekends and stuff I have to do, I don't know if that's going to happen. This might end up being more of an April thing, but we'll see. Another book that I got recently, Points North by Howard Frank Mosher. This is a series of short stories by him, and they're set, of course, in Kingdom County, Vermont, as always, but these ones seem to center around the Kinnison family specifically, which the Kinnison families are some of my favorite characters of his. So I'm really excited to read this collection, and this is also like his last book that he ever wrote, so emotional. Then I also want to do a reread of Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. Honestly, how I'm feeling, what I actually want to do is a reread of V for Vendetta, but I don't actually have a copy of V for Vendetta. But you know what? Watchmen also sounds like a good time to reread this too. So, yeah, I have read this exactly once. I would say probably a couple of months after I watched the movie in theaters years ago, and have not read it since. So, excited to dive into this. This is about superheroes, but like if superheroes were actually in our actual actually existing within our world, kind of. There's also some sciencey different stuff happening too, but yeah. But the big thing is who watches the Watchmen. So when Watchmen start dying, it's like, oh shit, what's happening? Yeah. Anyway. The rest of everything else is basically just books that when I walked around looking at my shelves, I was like, you know what, I think I'm in the mood for this and that, and you know what, maybe this too. So yeah, that's what everything else is. First is Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I did find my copy. This is book 2, sequel to Before the Coffee Gets Cold that I read last year that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I had to read book 2 about this very mysterious cafe where you can kind of time travel, but specifically in your life within the confines of the cafe. It's a little more complicated than that, but yeah, it's very interesting and kind of heartbreaking. Then I figured, you know, it might be fun to dive into a couple of weird ones. So first is The Lady Who Liked Clean Restrooms by J.P. Donlevy. It's a chronicle of one of the strangest stories ever to be rumored about around New York. And it's basically a woman, Jocelyn Guinevere Marchantier Jones, whose Scarsdale life comes to an abrupt end when her husband goes in search of a bit of fresh flesh. And she's fending for herself in New York City, where finding a clean restroom will prove to be the least of her concerns. I have no idea what to expect from this book. This is just a random weird-ass thing that I found, like, I don't know, like a year or two ago at a secondhand store, and why not? You find the weirdest shit at secondhand stores, and sometimes they turn out to be really good, so no idea what to expect, but it sounds like it might be a satire, so that's cool. Speaking of weird, I figured, why not? We'll pick up the first Christopher Moore. I've never read any Christopher Moore. I have another one of his floating around somewhere. But this is called Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal. That's all you need to know about this. And that was all I needed to know. So yeah. Then I also wanted to pick up Lake Woebegone Days by Garrison Keillor. I really like Garrison Keillor's writing. There he is. And this is basically about Lake Wobegon. Town's early history and down through everything, basically. I have not read a Keeler in a while, but I have really liked the couple that I have read. I don't know what this is really. It sounds like essays and stories and poems and songs, apparently. So, interesting collection of things. Yeah, I figured, even though this might be a May read, is what I'm thinking. This is going to be a May, maybe going into June read, because this feels like a warmer month read to me, like the kind of book that you could curl up in a nice warm rock and read for a while, if you catch my drift. Another recent acquisition is The Villa by Nora Roberts, because I figured, you know what, I think I want to read a romance novel. I think I'm in the mood to read a romance novel. And I also have a couple of other romance novels kicking around on my shelves that I still have not read yet. And I kind of want to jumpstart getting through those, because a couple of them have been on my shelves for a while, and I'm disappointed in myself that I still haven't read them. So, this is about a family who owns a villa. There's actually a couple of families that own villas. So you have the Giambellis, and this is mostly following Sophia Giambelli, who is like a marketing person for her family's vineyard, basically. But then the matriarch has announced a merger with the Macmillan family winery. So Sophia has to get along with Tyler of Macmillan's. And, you know, it's a romance novel, things ensue, but then because it's Nora Roberts, there's also like a threat to the vineyards and crazy shit happening down underneath. So, speaking of like mysterious stuff, I also want to get into Blood Sisters. This is by Vanessa Lilly, and this is about an archaeologist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Sid is in Rhode Island trying to protect the land's indigenous past, even as she's escaping her own. She's dedicated to her job, but haunted by a night of violence she barely escaped in her Oklahoma hometown 15 years ago. A skull found near a crime scene of her youth. Just as her sister Emma Lou vanishes, Sid knows that she has to return home. But not everybody is glad that Sid is home. So, stuff happening. Sounds wicked cool. And then, because also romancy bits, and also because me and one of my besties just recently rewatched Hamilton, I decided I want to maybe pick up the Hamilton Affair. This is by Elizabeth Cobbs, and this is the romantic story of the love between Alexander Hamilton and Elizabeth Schuyler. And, yeah, set against the dramatic backdrop of the American Revolution. So, historical fiction that's also romantic and stuff. I'm curious about what kind of stuff is going to be in here. And I'm curious about how it's written. It looks like it's written more like a story and not like a strict, like, textbooky type thing, which I love that. But I'm really curious about what all of this is going to be, because this author is a historian, novelist, and a documentary filmmaker. She has 4 books on American history, besides this one. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm also curious where she's gotten her information from, because you actually can read a lot of Alexander Hamilton's letters online. You can read like a whole bunch of them. If you type in, there is like, is it the Library of Congress? It might be. It's some kind of archive, because I know a couple of years ago I found these and I read all of them. There's a lot of letters. I read a lot of them, and that man fucking wrote. So you can read like his letters. You can read letters between him and Aaron Burr, him between George Washington, him and Lawrence, and also his letters to Eliza, basically. And man, I can understand why she was like a bit infatuated with him, because I was like, damn, man, if a boy was writing that to me, I mean, so I'm just kind of curious if she uses any of those within here in the early days. And that would be interesting. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically my gigantic pile of things that I want to get to this spring. Wish me luck, because I honestly have a tendency to get very excited like I am right now, and then life happens and most of the things don't get read anyway. But I am gonna try my damnedest to at least catch up with with my set things that I want to get through. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you have read any of these books, no spoilers, but let me know if you've read them, if you enjoyed them. And let me know if there's any that you think I should definitely 100% make like a higher priority because you want to hear my thoughts or something. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you are new here and would like to subscribe, please do so. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye.